He's dead, I don't have it! The only picture I'm to bleed about 8 feet to find, Bob.
You've been looking at a small sample of the action, color, and unforgettable excitement of the Old West. In the next half hour, you'll be seeing a lot more. You'll get a panoramic view of Western life 100 years ago, and you'll learn what one man and his family has done to preserve part of our Western heritage. This is a simple story about a young married couple who started this little roadside berry stand way back in 1920. Walter and Cordelia Knott began with nothing. There was almost no chance for success, and yet they did succeed. With courage and hard work, Knott's Berry Farm has grown from 10 acres of rented farmland to a massive 200-acre family attraction. The Knott family loved the West, so they decided years ago to make the farm a place to keep treasures of the past. This ghost town was brought here and added to building by building from abandoned gold rush towns all over California. The town and every exhibit in it are faithfully authentic. Old Betsy here was rescued from the Mojave Desert. This little red schoolhouse is just exactly the same today as it was in the 1870s. From real wind-swept, dust-covered, forgotten ghost towns crumbling into ruin, these priceless heirlooms of the past were brought here and set to rest with loving care, resurrected from the dead as a lasting tribute to our forefathers. In these surroundings, a little imagination can take almost anyone back in time, back through thousands of yesterdays, to the roaring, robust bonanza days more than 100 years ago. Jim Marshall discovered a few flakes of yellow gold in the tail race of Sutter's Mill, he triggered the greatest gold rush mankind has ever seen. But when the golden fuse that detonated California gold towns into existence finally burned out, the horde of humanity who had rushed to them from all over the world left as quickly as they came. The gold was gone. Almost overnight, towns that had been bursting with life became empty, deserted ghost towns. In time, some of them disappeared entirely. A new state was born, but the places where many towns had stood were marked only by heaps of rubble, a tottering shack, and dust-covered ruins. That's why the Knott family took on the imposing task of searching the West for buildings and relics. From abandoned towns and deserted mine shafts, they brought their precious discoveries here and built this town. Future generations will come here to look at the past, to touch it, and to walk through this town that once lived, then died to become a deserted ghost town. Now it lives again, this time forever. The great stampede for gold in 1849 was one of the most exciting moments in history. Visitors to the farm loved the thrill of panning for real gold, but very few have any idea what the inside of a real gold mine looks like. So the Knott family rolled up their collective sleeves and went to work again. This is the result, the Calico Gold Mine. This unusual gold mine was a big undertaking. A mountain had to be built to bring this newest addition to the many attractions at Knott's Berry Farm. It is the only one of its kind, and while the Calico Mine is designed for fun, anyone riding through it will encounter the sights and sounds to be found in a trip beneath the surface of the earth. In the depths of the Calico Mine are authentic reproductions of early mining techniques used in the real mines of the Comstock. Every detail is authentic. This donkey engine is just like the real thing. The passengers ride in 5 wooden planked mine cars strung out behind the engine. Our engineer on this trip will be Bud Hurlbut, a man who knows a lot about the history of mining and who played an important part in designing and building the Calico. The mine cars are loaded and away we go. A miner finds a trace of gold on the side of the mountain and begins to dig. As he follows the vein into the mountain, his strike becomes a mine. This entry tunnel has been shored up to keep rocks and shale from falling on the miners. Remember, the men who dig tunnels like this were following a vein of gold, so when the vein turned, the tunnel turned also. As miners followed the elusive yellow gold, it wasn't unusual for their tunnel to break suddenly through a crust into an underground cavern, like this one. This cavern-like room formed by Mother Nature is alive with steam pressures. Huge mud pots, each in a different color, belch bubbles of live steam. This natural display, with its magnificent colors of red, blue, green, and amber, is truly breathtaking. But to the miners, this live steam is only another source of possible danger. Hot geysers squirt jets of steam toward the cavern's rocky ceiling. Somewhere in the bowels of the earth, water has come in contact with volcanic, igneous rock, still in the cooling stage. The water, raised to the boiling point, created this steam. In some mines, the deeper you go, the hotter it gets. Many of them were so hot at deep levels, the miners could only work 15 minutes at a time. Elevators carried men and equipment up and down between the different levels. There were many Chinese workers. Almost every settlement in the Mother Lode had its Chinatown. The dynamite, of course, was used in blasting. As our train takes us even deeper, we approach one of the most important digging locations in any gold mine. This is the very heart of the mine. It's called the Glory Hole. This gigantic pit dug out of the bowels of the earth is called the Glory Hole because gold was found here in such abundance that this one location could be worked for some time. In pits like this, men of every nationality worked unbelievably hard, under the baleful, ever-watchful eye of the gang boss. When all else was equal, the man in charge was usually the man who could outfight anyone else in the crew. These three miners are cutting heavy timbers for shoring up some of the new shafts and working ledges as the Glory Hole keeps increasing in size. Miners like these work long hours. Very often in the winter months, they might never see the light of day. The old-timers worked hard, but they were noted for their sense of humor. In 1866, from a deep mine in Bald Mountain, some miners brought out a human skull and presented it to the world as the remains of a prehistoric man. It became known as the Pliocene skull and fooled a lot of experts for years. It was probably the gold country's greatest hoax. Bret Harte even wrote a poem about it. Miners always lied to each other about the biggest nugget they'd ever found, but none of their whoppers ever came close to the nugget actually found in Carson Hill near Angels Camp. It was one massive piece of gold weighing 195 pounds and valued at $73,710. In any mine, the Glory Hole was always a beehive of activity. A visitor could stand in one place and be able to see many different phases of gold mining. Some of the ore was dug right up with a shovel, loaded into one of Studebaker's famous wheelbarrows, and then was taken out of the mine to be processed. But most of the ore wasn't that easy to get. When solid rock barred the way, dynamite was used. First, the miners drilled a hole deep into the face of the rock. A stick of dynamite was inserted, and then it was tamped back into the drilled hole, as you see here. After the charge was set off, the rocks were loaded onto ore cars, pushed out of the mine, and sent on their way to the mills. From the floor of the Glory Hole, miners pursued that magic yellow mineral up and across in almost every direction. If the diggings were good, a miner would work his way right into the side of the mountain, making sure of preventing a cave-in by shoring up loose rocks on the way. And above him in the Glory Hole, you might have seen another miner following his vein of yellow. As he worked in the flickering light of his candle, he loaded the treasure-bearing rocks into waiting ore cars. Sometimes the miners went up so high in the Glory Hole, they had to lower the ore down in buckets to where there were cars to take it out of the mud. The figures of these miners in the Glory Hole stand immovable and silent. Even so, they've told us a lot about gold mining and the mining men they symbolize. Most people don't realize it, but there are many underground rivers and lakes. Miners working deep in the subterranean recess of a mountain have often broken through a wall, and there before them lay a tranquil body of water. In some of these lakes, fish have been found who were totally blind. They didn't need eyes in the absolute darkness of their underground home. Those miners are not panning for gold. They've been mining back in the tunnel, and they've come to the lake to wash out a pan and check the quality of the ore. Some underground lakes date back centuries before Columbus discovered America. The progress of their growth and the silent darkness of their subterranean domain can be traced by the watermarks etched on the stone walls. In direct contrast to the quiet stillness of an underground lake can be the wild, unrelenting surge of a subterranean river. That roar we hear ahead is the thunder of a waterfall. Who knows from what depths of the earth this torrent came, and who can say where it is going in its mad, headlong dash? Perhaps somewhere hidden in the depths of our planet is a huge lake, larger than any we have on the surface. As our train rounds a curve, we arrive at the bottom of the mine. Supposedly, we are now at the 3,000-foot level. Eventually, perhaps this mine will go much deeper. We can see how the miners are bringing up a bucket of ore from the shaft, which is already reaching deeper. But even 3,000 feet would be impossible without these square timbers. This is an accurate reproduction of square-set timbering, as invented by Philip Diedesheimer. In 1860, Diedesheimer perfected square-set timbering to eliminate cave-ins. And even though he was laughed at and scoffed at in the beginning, ridicule turned to glowing praise, and he was eventually known as the savior of the Comstock. His unique invention made mining safe even at deeper levels. Hard rock mining changed gold production figures from millions of dollars to hundreds of millions. Without square-set timbering, many mines still operating today would have been abandoned a century ago. As our train starts back up, we pass new diggings. These are called stopes in mining. The men have dug up so far, they're out of sight. Very often, but it is possible for miners tunneling their shaft into a mountain to break through a wall unexpectedly and find themselves standing in an immense cavern, like this. Mother Nature, with her infinite patience, ignored the passing of thousands of years and fashioned her hidden masterpiece. Actual subterranean caverns like this are known to be millions of years old. Each stalactite, hanging from the roof of the cavern like an icicle, was formed by water seeping out of the ceiling and leaving a trail of calcium carbonate. With every drop of water, a tiny speck of the mineral was added to the formation, and thus it grew. In places where the drip continued, droplets falling to the floor built a stalagmite growing upward. This stalactite grew down, and its brother stalagmite reached up to meet it. Only inches to go, and then they will be joined together. How long before they meet? Well, if they had been like this before the Dark Ages, they might be almost touching now. Who can say what was happening on the surface of the earth when nature began forming this magnificent arch? Here's another of her creations. Miners are always thinking of food, so they call it the bacon strip. One of the more poetic miners gave this formation the name of the King's Room. Can you see the throne? The same man called this the castle. As you gaze at the beauty of this cavern, it's difficult to remember nature did it all in utter blackness. You can see anything your imagination is capable of seeing. An enchanted city with Gothic skyscrapers, stalagmites that look like fire hydrants, others that resemble giant candlesticks with melted wax running down the side. Perhaps you may see a statue or a totem pole. The miners call this the bottomless pit. They haven't any idea how deep it really is. It was caused by water which dissolved the rock, probably around a vertical fracture in the bedrock. In this ageless cavern, time seems to stand still, but our train doesn't, so we continue on. This mining device is called a winze, W-I-N-Z-E. Miners used it as a do-it-yourself elevator to pull buckets of ore from one level to another. The bucket simply slid up or down on the timber rails. We passed the glory hole again, this time from the top level, looking down. From this marvelous high vantage point, we swing around a curve and cross over a trestle, while under us, miners work a stope leading up and out of the glory hole. That pounding ahead is the deafening clatter of ore coming down a chute into a mine car. The brightness of sunlight ahead, and high on the side of the mountain, we emerge into the open. Our train takes us between two gigantic waterfalls. We circle beneath a rock ledge and re-enter the mountain. The glory hole, this time from the middle level, and this view gives us a completely different perspective of the immense pit. As we move ahead, we pass a side digging. This is something you almost always find in a mine. This one is being used as a storeroom for dynamite. On the workbench, we can see where the men have been inserting the fuses, so we know that blasting is going on somewhere in this area. As careful as miners are with explosives, accidents have been known to happen, so we must proceed cautiously. That's the blasting warning. A charge of dynamite is about to be set off, and we're too far into the tunnel to stop.
a real gold mine.
I just wonder how they got those
That
channels
was very
cracked and bright.
That was.
Quite touching, wasn't it?
Yes, I did like that story.
I didn't know there was Chinese miners.
I feel as though we've been through a real gold mine.
A family builds a mountain, and they called it the Calico Gold Mine. At Knott's Berry Farm, there's always a lot to see, such as the wagon masters performing. And, of course, there's a lot to do. This is one of the most unique shooting galleries in the world. Rifles fire with the sound of exploding powder, and gun recoil can be felt against the shoulder, but no real bullets are fired. It's all done electronically and in absolute safety. Nevertheless, you still get all the excitement of hunting lifelike animals in their own wooded surroundings. Here at the farm, you can taste the flavor of age in things like this old cable car, or the music of this ancient calliope. There's always something special happening here, like this Prospectors' Day parade, celebrating the discovery of gold in California. The success of Knott's Berry Farm is really the portrait of a family. One son, 3 daughters, and their spouses, who stayed together and worked together to help carry out the dream of Walter and Cordelia. 40 years ago, when the dream was born in this berry stand, it was only a hope for simple success. Together, they've created a historical and educational landmark for the enjoyment of everyone. For as the little farm grew, the dream became important, and the family gathered crumbling treasures of the past. They restored and guarded these vestiges of our Western heritage so they might be shared by the future. They never lost faith in themselves or in each other, and in the end, even they were astounded with the results. The family had moved an entire ghost town to Buena Park. They started with a berry stand, and they became the family that built a mountain.